This is a short video for artists, performers, promoters, organisers, artistic activists in the wake of the COVID crisis. And the question is thus: how can we build a new world in the shell of the old? The world as we know it is, the risk of sounding a bit apocalyptic, is coming to an end. There's definitely going to be the pre-COVID world and the post-COVID world. The artistic economy that I belong to and that many of you belong to is pretty much collapsing underneath our feet. Let's be honest, theatres are closing, nights have ceased to exist, entire tours have collapsed, careers are disintegrating. And funding sources and employers are shriveling up and contracting. That's the bad news. So what is the challenge for us as creatives, and how can we maintain creative articulation in a post-COVID world and a continent which is sliding towards fascism? We've got a job cut out for us, right? One of the big risks is that the only people who will be able to continue practicing their artistic craft in the wake of this are white middle class men such as me, right? So how can we also bring new voices into the fray, and minority voices into the arts in a way that can sustain them, in a way that we can sustain each other, right? In a world which is not going to support us as artists. So in my book, Stage Invasion, there is a chapter looking at the cultural renewal of poetic communities and how they can be used for DIY cultural kind of grassroots, bottom-up revival. And I really do believe in this. And one of the anecdotes I look at is something was actually brought up in an interview with James Mackay that I did, and he was talking about how he was inspired to get into spoken word by going to Berlin and seeing what was popping up in all of these decomposing spaces in the wake of the fall of the Berlin Wall. So in East Berlin, there were all these squats and young people were going in there, and the economy was decimated. But what that left were spaces where young people could get together and improvise. Right, what we're talking about is microeconomies, and Mackay took this back to Newcastle and created his own sort of living room networks of spoken word gigs. And this is really how the scene that I belong to, the spoken word community, how it began. Right, it was a bottom-up thing. It was just people, even without a sound system or a venue, just getting together and exchanging words and creating artistry and creating brilliance out of that. Look at all the artistic beauty that has grown out of that simple formula of people just getting together. And it doesn't take much, right? So my proposal is that we initiate a sprawling diaspora of microeconomies all over the country as a kind of remedial biological mechanism by which we can heal the scars left by the destruction of our cultural institutions. I'm not entirely sure that all of these cultural institutions and these funding bodies and these theatres and these arts organisations really belonged to us as artists anyway. I'm sure many of you as performers, whatever it is you're doing, will have a tricky relationship with money and the institutions and the organisations which decide how that money gets spent and that organise the events, all made up of well-meaning people, of course. But when those organisations become less sustainable, how can we do it for ourselves? It's not going to be easy. It's going to also mean housing ourselves creatively. Personally, I think we're going to have to, this renaissance, this revival will have to skip hand in hand with a squatting revival or anything that's going to give us spaces where we can be and exist at low cost, because if you don't have that, you can't have the arts. So there's that dimension to it. But yeah, the future is bright, and I think if there is destruction, that is always preceding great beauty and regeneration as a biological principle. Ask any mushroom. A mushroom is the efflorescence of death, the chaos principle, the regeneration that comes from degeneration. Okay, so history is on our side. When Jesus said the meek shall inherit the earth, he was an unemployed carpenter with who was being repressed by the state, and now he's doing pretty well. He's got a venue in every town and city and an army of spoken word artists singing his gospel.